I pulled off my blanket, I rolled off the couch, I crawled across the living room, and I got up into her lap. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Hey, pray for me. I'm sorry. I'm tired of living like this." I remember being homeless. I remember living in parks and rundown buildings and staying on like benches and slides and different things like that. And I remember my mom having to, in order to feed us and support us, I remember her having to go into a store with an empty baby bag and just starting to throw anything she can in that bag, hot dogs, buns, whatever, to be able to feed us. My father was never in the equation up to that point because of him having to be in prison. He went to prison for, sexually assaulting and abusing myself, and then, abusing my mom, and not having a home and not having two parents in the house started to develop this trend of instability in my life. I remember moving from several different cities and states and never necessarily having a place to call my own. The first sense of stability I had was when we moved to Kansas. My grandpa died, so we made the decision to come and start taking care of my grandma. I used to go over to her house all the time and take care of her, and she was really the one thing in my life at that moment, that I could just rely on, I can count on. So transitioning into high school, I still wasn't, even though I'm getting a little bit older, a little bit wiser, the instability, the not having a strong foundation to rely on just affected my grades. I didn't care about the schoolwork. I didn't care about doing all that. And I ended up getting to a point where I ended up dropping out of school to have to pick up the slack of not having a father figure at home. And so I went out, I got a job, I ended up becoming basically the sole provider of myself, my mom, and my two sisters. So it was at this job where I met Becky, who is now my wife, but at the time she was my manager. She hired me, all that. And that was another kind of like a point to where there was some more stability happening in my life. I go to sleep one night, I wake up in the morning, I was woken out of a dead sleep to my mom shaking me, telling me, "Hey, Chris, your grandma died." And that right there was a moment where I felt like my life was starting to fall apart. She was the closest thing I had to a best friend. We were extremely close. We spent a lot of time together, and I've never dealt with death before on a personal level like that. And it felt like my whole world was shattering.
I just remember him calling me just so upset, sobbing, and just almost hysterical that his grandma had died. And I guess maybe because I had never met her, he had talked about her, but I didn't realize the impact that it was gonna have.
I just felt like my entire life was falling apart. I had anxiety attacks, I had panic attacks. I couldn't get out of my house and go do something without feeling like I'm gonna die.
And I'd come around and we'd maybe plan to go to Wichita, or I'd want to go do something instead of just staying at his house and hanging out. He'd say, yeah, we will. And then he just couldn't. He couldn't do anything. I remember at least one time we went into Wichita and we were just walking around an area, just out enjoying the weather, and he just started to hyperventilate and he could not calm himself down, and nothing had happened. He just general breathing he couldn't do. He just lost it, and we ended up taking him to the emergency room, and it was just a panic attack, just stress and his depression, and it was terrible.
One night, I'm laying on the couch. It's pitch black, and basically pitch black in the living room. Just the light of a street light shining through, and I'm laying on the couch and just bundled up, and I just don't want to move because I feel safe there. And Becky's sitting on the recliner, and she's just watching my life deteriorate. And at that moment, I knew she could be doing something else, and I knew at that moment that, okay, I'm no longer going to push away this fear of stability because I've never had it. I pulled off my blanket, I rolled off the couch, I crawled across the living room, and I got up into her lap. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Hey, pray for me. I'm sorry. I'm tired of living like this." that moment was a turning point for me being scared, for me being locked by this sense of fear and this sense of things are going to fail me. And the moment that I had to come and ask for my wife for help when I was going through this period was the moment where not only did I feel like I'm finally starting to get the help, but that was the moment God's like, I'm ready. Are you ready to follow me? Are you ready? I'm going to change your life. You know, and God has totally just shifted my perception on like, if the entire world fails, God's the one person I can rely on. He's the one person that will never fail me, and he'll never harm me. And so he started to spark this dream, this kind of like ambition to want it to create, to want to take who the very essence of God is, who is a creator, and to do that. 4 months ago, I had the incredible opportunity to be able to step into a position of becoming a creative director at MWC Church. If I was to give encouragement, you may be in a dark time, and you may think that your whole world is gone, your whole world is shattered, and that no one's there to love you or support you, or you may just feel like everything is going to come crashing down on you. But just know that there's someone out there that will never leave you, that will never ever leave your side, no matter how bad things get.